just go while we talk. It's super insane. Cool. Yeah, sit right here. I'm just gonna make sure that we're all lined up. I think we're good. How I'll do it is I'll kind of talk at the camera for a minute to introduce what this all is, because this is technically episode 1, even though I recorded the crosses one before you guys. And then we'll just have a conversation about ministry in Costa Rica and fun stuff. And think more podcast. We're just talking more than like we're telling the camera something. We're just talking to each other. That's really cool. Okay, so just kind of let it breathe for a second before starting it. Hey everybody, Pastor Ryan here. We have this cool new thing that we're starting. This is the Valley Chapel podcast, and you'll be able to get this on our website, and the videos will be on YouTube, so it'll be both a video podcast and an audio podcast. But today, for our first episode, I'm really excited that I get to introduce to you Dennis Leon from Costa Rica. He is one of the missionaries that we support as a church, and hopefully you enjoy the conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. So, Dennis, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's such an awesome thing to be here, and you guys have been such a blessing to us. We always get taken away by the generosity and I would say even the hospitality, right? This part of New York.
Oh, yeah.
You guys have been awesome.
But hospitality, how have we been uniquely hospitable?
I think in a way, hospitality really comes. It's not just necessarily like taking people into your house so much, but it's kind of showing that you care. I think, that's a really hospitality is, because you can take somebody into your house and you can't wait for them to get out of there.
Yeah.
But actually, we've actually been in a trailer in the parking lot here at the church. I'm traveling with my family, and it's very awesome. Like this morning, we got up and we had donuts outside our door. It's just like I know an angel left it there, but probably that angel, I know who that person is, and so I think hospitality really, for us, is really showing how much you care.
Okay, and I feel like that's like a ministry concept in and of itself, the idea of hospitality. I get the idea that Christ is a very hospitable person to follow, God to follow.
Yes, as a matter of fact, every time we see Jesus having a deep conversation or something like that, he never was really in a formal setting, like per se. It's not like he set them in a classroom or something. He's always just kind of hanging out with them. And sometimes, if normally there was food involved too, there was food and conversation involved, and it was just kind of having that time. I think it's just hospitality really plays into making sure that people get to relax and be themselves, and it's just a safe place to be.
So my wife and I have very different ideas of hospitality from our own backgrounds. It's been fascinating learning how to navigate it. So in my house growing up, hospitality was, you come on in, you're part of the family. Therefore, the fridge is yours, go in. The cabinet's yours, go in. If you want to cook something, go ahead and cook it. Everything that is ours is yours. And then Casey's family was, you show up, you are our guest. We will serve you. If you're thirsty, we're asking you if you're thirsty, and we're bringing you a drink. If you're hungry, we're asking if you're hungry, and we're bringing you food. So it's, for me, entering their world, it was like, oh, I'm not supposed to touch the fridge because they're going to bring me something from the fridge. But for her stepping into my world, hospitality was is it okay if I touch your refrigerator? Is it okay if I get a drink? I don't know if I'm supposed to do that or not. So we had to navigate that a little bit. And I am kind of I've never been in a foreign country. I've only Canada. And I'm curious, being that you're from a place that's different from here, Costa Rica, how is the hospitality in Costa Rica as a culture different from the hospitality in the U.S.?
Awesome. So, Costa Rica, we had to realize that it's a relational culture, or we could say, is a collective culture, as in like the U.S. is more like a single culture. Let's say it's more individualistic. Yeah, we're collectivistic. Here is more individualistic. So in Costa Rica, there is a thing that you have to be careful because we're so relational that for us, like for example, for my family, if we want to have like a day to our family, we need to get out of town.
Oh, okay.
And we need to get out of town to a place that, that we can actually just go there because it's in a way, there is almost this like, people get so comfortable that it's almost this open door policy. Like we have people dropping in at our house all the time, people know that they can just come up and they'll probably find me there and, we'll talk and everything. So hospitality there, it really comes from like being available, and then it's because in a way, culturally speaking, it is expected like that. Like, sometimes I will say for an example, if I show up to your house here in the US and you're mowing the lawn, I cannot just expect you to stop your lawnmower, come and sit down with me and have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
In Costa Rica.
Busy mowing my lawn.
Yeah, and and sometimes it's like, oh man, I'm so glad you stopped by. Hey, we should like call me up or send me a message. Let's plan to have coffee next week. For us in Costa Rica, it's like, you're here, let's have coffee. So the lawn is going to still be there tomorrow and in 2 hours and 2 days, but you are here now. So let's have coffee. So because of that, we also, it's just that we need to be available. And that's one of the things in ministry, we need to plan our ministry in such a way that we're so flexible because we need to seize those teachable moments as well. So if somebody shows up at 2 in the afternoon, on a Tuesday to my house, I have no plans, we didn't schedule anything, but he's there and he's ready to talk, and sometimes if I say to him, okay, let's talk next week, I missed the chance, you know what I mean? Because at that moment I felt like that was a teachable moment. So, or some people would call it that was a divine appointment. So I think, that kind of be the difference, but at the same time we need to make sure that we guard ourselves and we protect ourselves, because if we just have like an open door policy completely, it could take a toll in our family, my kids, my wife, and us. So we need to kind of be wise and navigate that.
And I feel like that's how Jesus did it, isn't it?
I guess so. I think most of the times Jesus, if you look at Jesus, sometimes he was always focused, but he was never so busy that he couldn't take time to do important things. It reminds me a little bit of, when he was walking and there was so many people squishing him and walking and, and then this lady who had the bleeding problem, right? Remember that? And she's like, if I can only touch the hem of his robe, I will be healed. And she actually does that. Yeah. And when she does that, immediately Jesus says, someone touch me. And the disciples are like crazy, of course somebody touched you. There's so many people around it. People is like pushing you and everything. It's like, no, somebody touched me. And he acknowledged that. So it's interesting that Jesus was always really focused. I cannot say that he was always busy, but he was always intentional. And that's a big difference. I think sometimes we confuse that and we say that a busy person is an important person. And it's not true. If you're intentional, yeah, you have a purpose, but you always have time to be able to care for what really matters. And that moment that lady touched him, he took that time, and it was an amazing lesson, not just to her, but everybody around him.
Yeah, because it seems like Jesus was always interruptible. And almost all the messages are like, they were walking and somebody asked him a question, and there's your moment where it's being taught. And then, like, he was available when he was available, and then he wasn't when he wasn't, when he, like, go off to the mountain. And, like, you got to get out of town, which sounds exactly like what you're talking about. You got to get out of town quick so that I can rest, recuperate, reconnect with my Father, and then he'd come back and he'd be engaged in that.
Yeah, and if we think about it, sometimes it's just a cultural thing, but we need to watch sometimes culturally speaking is what are the principles underneath that. Like if we think about Middle Eastern culture, it's more similar to Latino culture, where family is valued, where people is valued, and if we look at more European culture or like, even the US culture is more task oriented, we need to get it done, we need to do this. And so I think, just watching Jesus, what really teaches is we are reminded that in a way, we need to kind of adjust the way how we do discipleship. For example, I have found out that sometimes for me, in half a day going surfing with somebody, I get more done in half a day that I would have got in 3 months' time scheduling discipleship on Tuesdays at 4 to 5, from 4 to 5. So it's almost like in a one morning, just spending time with that person, sitting in the car, having breakfast, having coffee. That person has questions. He's ready to hear. He's ready to listen, to what we have to say. But, sometimes there's things that we want to say and people are not ready. So I think that Jesus that's kind of what we say. Jesus kind of sees that moment. Yeah. He was there. He was ready. And when people wanted to know, he was ready to tell them. So I think it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of, we need to see how we can adjust discipleship in that sense.
Yeah, to make it so that it can be in the moment, be spontaneous and organic. And we were talking about this earlier. You mentioned the style of church planting that you guys do in Costa Rica. And I think organic was a word that came up in our conversation. So for the folks listening, how does that organic, spontaneous idea of ministry on a personal level connect to it on more the goal of the kingdom and the growth of the church level?
There is always that sense of like sometimes people, people that are more programmatic or systematic or let's say strategic, sometimes they see the word organic in such a way as like, man, that's just being lazy, you're not prepared. And actually I would say totally opposite. To be organic, to be intentional, to be like spontaneous, that means that you always have to be prepared. You cannot, like if I sign up I get to study all morning to be able to do a class at 4, it's almost like, that's cool, I got that chance. But in this case, we always have to be on mission. So for us, for example, even in Costa Rica, we started Church Among Surfers. And, and sometimes the way how we do it, it's so relational. Sometimes people literally we're right on the beach, so sometimes people just saw us gathering and they just come up, drop the surfboard outside, and they come in and say, so what's up? So we just engage and talk to him. And, but for some people, they probably think that the way how our church got started is like, they said, maybe they think that Dennis one day got out of the beach, checked his hand off, and he said, man, it would be fun to start a church, wouldn't it? And like I just started doing, let's do a church. No, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. There's a lot of preparation. The morning, the moment I get up in the morning, I want to be ready. And I want to be ready, in the sense of like, who am I going to encounter today? So being intentional and being organic, it doesn't mean that you're messy or that you are disorganized. It means that you are intentional and that you prepare for it ahead of time. I don't know, does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, that idea of always being ready, always being prepared. Because I know I'll feel flustered if I don't have that chance to prepare beforehand and I start second guessing my own abilities and whether I actually have something intelligent to say if I didn't prepare in advance. And how do you overcome that in your context and in that always ready mentality?
I think there's always a temptation, right, to all of us. To any leader, and I think the temptation is to sound smart. There's always that temptation, like I want to say something that sounds smart, And sometimes even for sermons, I'm like sometimes people like, we're at church and when people go home and say, man, it's amazing how much Hebrew Ryan knows, Wow, it's amazing. I didn't know Dennis was such a good Bible teacher, And so they go home almost with this awe of the teacher, but what did they hear? So it's almost like being intentional and being ready. It almost goes to like, I'd rather people go home saying, man, I gotta be a better brother. I better be a better son, a better friend. There's something I need to change in my life. So in other words, I want people to go challenge. So with that, I think how we have overcome it is that I think we minister out of identity rather than for identity.
Go on, expand.
And I would say this, sometimes people say, if I do A, B, C, then I could be this. And so they almost do everything in ministry is for them to achieve somebody, to be somebody. But, so this for identity is like, if I do these things, if I get all these things in a row, maybe I can be called to the next thing or to the next level, or I could be, the next so-and-so, or I could look like so-and-so. So it's almost like, you're ministering not out of love for the people, or out of compassion for people, out of compassion or love for Jesus. It's almost like you want to get somewhere. So when you do that, you kind of feel like you always need to be prepared, and you have to be so ready and kind of do that. And I think when we do it out of identity, it really flows from who we are and what relationship we have with Jesus. For example, I think one of the biggest temptations for a lot of leaders and a lot of pastors is every time they open the Bible, when they look at the Bible, they are looking at how this can be a blessing to somebody else. Oh man, this would be the good message for this and this person. Oh man, but what about them? So I think, sometimes the biggest temptation is like a leader, every devotional they do has to be in line for what they're going to teach on Sunday, or, somewhere, some other day. But I think in that case, it's like, I think my personal level is like, what am I learning for myself? For example, I could be, right now we were doing a little bit of a series on James, but for my devotional I was reading Romans. So it's like, what about Dennis? I need to feed Dennis. I need to be ready and just be on guard and just to always be fed, because I need to have that. I guess my base needs to be full always. Yeah. That makes sense?
That does make sense. That idea of you don't study scripture so that you can apply it to somebody else. You study it so you can apply it to you, and when somebody else is in need, Christ will speak through you because you've allowed him to speak to you first. Yes. Okay, cool. That's great. And how do you find that speaks to the insecurity? Like, I'm not good enough to do this. I'm not smart enough to show Jesus to somebody because I don't know how to convince them that Jesus is good, or I don't know how to. I think that insecurity is a real fear.
Yeah. Insecurity, that's a fascinating thing, and I think it's like, it just really comes, how do we overcome insecurity? It's by accepting who we are. If I try to say, oh man, I need to convince these people, and first, it really goes, it's like, do I really have to convince somebody? If I serve a God that cannot convince people, or if I serve a God that I need to be defending, all the time, I don't think it's a God worthy of following. So, I think it's when I look at, examples like the Samaritan woman, that lady had a reputation, and not a good one. So she could be filled of all kinds of insecurities, but the moment that she met with Jesus, she understood that she found grace. And she understood that in her brokenness, God is still willing to use it. So I think the biggest problem with that is when we switch the message of the gospel and we focus the gospel on us as the messenger, and instead of Jesus as as the message. So of course I will be always incapable and insecure about sharing about Jesus, because I'm not worthy if I would think so. But when I can say, it's like, and then the other part is about sharing the gospel is to be authentic. Sometimes there's another thing as a myth that every Christian to share the gospel, they have to have all their ducks in a row, or at least appear so. Yeah. And so that's not realistic. There's a lot of broken people. That's why we're here. That's why we're in church, because we're broken. We need Jesus. And so in our brokenness, we can tell other people, hey, this is going on in my life, and this is this is how God is helping me. So, and that's the other part. It's like, how do we overcome the insecurity? Is sometimes there is something that we have bought, that we have to be like a Bible scholar, a theologian, to be able to share the gospel. That is a huge lie. That's actually dangerous to think so. And I would say, we need to start with my story, what Jesus did with me, because the reality is, we live in times that the Bible is debatable. Anybody can debate the Bible, but man, nobody can debate what God did on you. If you used to be this and now you're this, who can debate that? It's out in front of everybody. So nobody, that's a non-debatable thing. So I would always just share with people, say what God did with you. So yeah, I mean, we have people that are like 2 months old, 3 months old of being a Christian, and these people are bringing people to Christ. You know, and we can say, oh no, you can't. You know, sometimes I feel like we put a muscle on them, and we kind of say, you have to take a 6-month discipleship on how to share the gospel, and then you can do it. It's like, you know, if the gospel changed them, let them share it.
You can trust the Spirit's work in that instead of having to control it or make it look like some specific thing. It makes me think of a story of Martin Luther. When Martin Luther was first becoming a priest, it was tradition to go to the Vatican and perform communion for the first time at the Vatican. And he got there and he started to perform communion, and he just broke down because he's like, I'm not worth it. I'm completely incapable of this. I can't do this. And he left just devastated by his own unworthiness to stand before a holy God. And as he chewed on it over the years, he eventually learned about that it's not about being worthy. Like this act of ministry, in his case was communion, that he was thinking about was, it's God. It's God who does it. It's God who died. It's Christ who died for us. It's Christ who bled for us. It's Christ who we're remembering. It has nothing to do with me. It doesn't matter if I'm worthy enough to do it. It matters that Christ is worthy enough to have done it and to remember it. And I feel like that's connecting with this idea of it's not about what I'm capable of saying. It's about what Christ has done, and me just telling people what Christ has done. He's transformed me in this way.
That also shapes into the way how we empower other people. Because one of the things, about insecurity that is a huge monster, I think for all the leaders, is I think the symptoms of insecurity is pride and arrogance. When I see somebody that totally, is arrogant and, prideful, most people you can get mad or think, what do you think you are, But I feel compassion because I know that deep under that there's an insecurity. They don't really know who they are. And they feel like they have to keep it up or, show this. So it really helps me to deal with them in a better way, to just approach them with love rather than judgment. So, and then, my personal thing is I also understand that my job is to empower others. Because when I realize that if God could use me, God can use anybody. And then it also takes the focus or, the lenses of people's gifts, and I will focus them on obedience. Because I feel like we live in times where talents and gifts are overrated and obedience is underrated. So sometimes, we look at people and it's like, man, that person's so gifted. Yeah, there's a lot of gifted people out in the world. But are they obedient? So I think I'd rather so much, just see somebody that maybe has just one talent, but he's obedient. And when he puts that talent into the obedience of God, God can do amazing things.
I like that comparison, talent. Instead of highlighting talents and abilities, and it's almost like you're looking for something that's already there for God to use instead of believing that God can use what we can't see.
Yes. It really comes right with that, with also the sense of we believe in holistic ministry. We believe that sometimes people just care about people's souls. It's like we just want to save people so they don't go to hell. But the reality is God is involved, and we start living now. And when we start thinking about that, even leadership or discipleship, we need to think of a person as a whole. So yes, I think when we look at that, we look at people's maturity on the heart, the mind, and the hands. It's a really in a way, it's a really Wesleyan thing.
Yeah.
Because and so unfortunately, most people these days focus first on the mind, and then they focus on the hand, and then the last is the heart. But the reality is, when we think about it, let me just say a little bit, the heart really comes with integrity. That's a really hard thing to teach. Oftentimes you do have it or you don't. So when we look at, for example, even to workers for the field, we are looking at people's hearts. because we can have somebody incredibly gifted up here and incredibly gifted with hands, but their heart is somewhere else. Their heart is just is twisted. There's envy there. There's other things. They could be amazing serving, but they're not a good testimony of their marriage. They're not a good testimony of their town. Sometimes people are incredibly gifted, but people talk bad about them, and unfortunately it's true. So what we focus on, like even for raising new leaders, is we kind of focus on the heart, because the reality is that the mind can be trained and can be taught, but the hands can be also trained, but the heart is a thing of God. So we are kind of, we rather look at people's hearts. I'd rather have somebody that has a heart that is right with God, and on down the road he can learn, he can be trained on the others.
So when you're looking at hearts, I know part of what Scripture teaches is that we can't really know somebody's heart. Only the Lord knows somebody's heart. So how do you, when you're trying to start with the heart, how do you discern that? How do you discern whether somebody is trustworthy and that their heart has integrity before you give them a layer of authority or responsibility in the midst of the body of Christ?
Yeah, I think how we do that, it's like it's not really that we're trying to like zone in and try to discern, but it's really the fruit of the Spirit. And when we talk about the fruit of the Spirit, sometimes people have misinterpreted that fruit of the Spirit, and they think that the fruit of the Spirit is winning a lot of people. You know what I mean? Oh man, that person is so fruitful. Look at all the people that went, for Christ. But the fruit of the Spirit, they're all really in the heart. So is that person patient? How did that person does with confrontation? How do he deals with conflict? Is that person have self-control? How do that people deal with anger? So we're looking at those kind of things, and those kind of things, when we look at that, those never really lie. And the reality, and we're saying, and I'm not saying about reputation. I'm talking about character.
What you've actually witnessed somebody's in their behavior.
Exactly. Because reputation is one thing. Reputation is what people say about you. But character is who you are. And you can try to be somebody in this circle of friends, but the reality is you're not that person. We're looking at the person. So when we say that, we could say, sometimes people say, man, that guy is an amazing husband. What his wife has to say about that? So, and like when we look at the example, we look at living it out, and then we hear also the word in the town. Say, man, that guy really changed. Wow, that guy, that guy is a pretty good guy. It's amazing. I'm not religious, but that guy's cool. And like we start seeing, that's how we be able to see it's just the fruit. We can't, it's not like we have any special discernment on that, but it's just the fruit of who they are and are they living out the Christian faith. Yeah. That makes sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And being able to just, in recognizing that people are a mixed bag. Sometimes, somebody might lean more in the direction of integrity, but there's still stuff that they're working through. And that's one of my challenges. Like, I know myself. I know that there are parts of my life that I have given over to the Lord, and there are parts that it's harder for me to give over to the Lord, and I'm constantly working on that. And as a pastor, it's hard because it feels like part of my job is to discern whether somebody has given over enough or something like that to be given a position of authority, and to say, is this person's character enough that I can trust the flock that God has entrusted to me? I can entrust them to this person. Yeah. That's a real, it feels gross when I think about it. It feels like, who am I to make that call about somebody? Yet, Christ calls shepherds to watch out for wolves and to watch out for that stuff. And I'll look, and you mentioned somebody who has pride, for example. There's I'm blanking on my words, but there's brokenness behind the pride. There's brokenness behind the insecurity. There's brokenness behind the self-love or the whatever the negative thing is. church planting and growing the body and finding people that you can empower and push forward to help them reach other people, we're all leading out of brokenness.
All of us.
So, at what point do you say, I should be finding somebody who's less broken? Like, are we making some kind of judgment call about that? About this person's broken enough or not broken enough, or transformed enough or not transformed enough?
I think that comes with how do we define holiness? You know, too. And the way, let me just say it a little bit, the way how we find holiness. Holiness is not a synonym of perfection, but it's a synonym of honesty. You know, I mean, like, I think I'd much rather somebody said, man, I really struggle with anger. To me, that person, if he was here on this level of appreciation, that person is up here. Why? Because he was honest. It takes a lot of guts to say, I struggle with this. And when somebody does that and has the humility and the strength and I'd rather that person comes to tell me, I would much rather that person be leading than somebody that is hiding it. So sometimes people can hide, you know, for a long time. But then obviously, like I said, character is going to surface. You know, people's reputation could be like amazing for that guy, but their character, who he really is going to surface. And it's going to surface at the worst moments, you know, sometimes. So I'd rather, you know, like, for example, when we work with leaders, we're trying to empower leaders. One of the things that we try to do is to create a safe environment where they can literally show up and throw up. You know, I'd rather that, you know, I'd rather so much more than somebody that I have under my care as a leader to come and say, Janice, you know what, I'm having problems with my wife. Or, man, I don't really know how to deal with my teenage kids. I don't know what to do. I'd rather, you know, that honesty. To me, that's honesty. To me, that's integrity. You know, not try to figure it out that he knows all the answers and then the kid is doing it and he's in denial. You know what I mean? It's just weird, and it almost kind of like feels awkward to say, bro, you're saying this, but we're seeing this.
Yeah.
So it's not like so much that, you know, I think in that case, it's not that we make the judgment of who is good and who's not. It's like, I think in ministry there is one thing, either you qualify yourself or you disqualify yourself. And I would say for us, a qualification for ministry is servanthood and honesty. So for us, you know, one of the things is we don't rush into giving the word leader or the title of leader to anybody. It's a mistake. You know, I learned hard way. You know, when you give the title of leader, for some reason, some people don't do good with that. So because all of a sudden they feel like they are empowered to be over other people and to manipulate other people and to feel like I'm in another level of Christianity and you are under me, so I need to tell you. But when we see the way how Jesus did it, I mean, washing disciples' feet and doing that, it's just kind of, for us, leadership is earned through service. You know, so it just makes it easy. So it's not me trying to see who is fit or not. They show themselves.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I feel like that teaches us a lot about how to make ourselves available to God for use in the field, to become a worker. Not be focused on how can I be a leader, but being focused on how can I be a worker? What can I do?
A true servant will never need a position to serve. You know, and that's the fear we were talking earlier. When you feel like you need a position, it's because you're serving for identity. You're not serving out of identity.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So to start wrapping up, I think one question that I want to ask is, we're, as the church in America, so it's kind of changing, I'm changing the subject line a little bit here. As the church in America, connecting with you guys in Costa Rica, how can our relationship benefit the kingdom in both places? How can this partnership that we have by knowing you guys and supporting you guys help the kingdom to grow in both places?
That's a really good question. You know, I have a lot of thought, you know, I've been thinking a lot about that too, because unfortunately right now around the world there's so many people talking trash about the church in America. You know, and I think it's not right, because I think if we are thankful and if we are appreciative, man, you know, the U.S., talking, you know, obviously when I I say America, I'm talking the U.S. because America is a lot larger.
A lot larger than the U.S.
Yes. But the U.S. has been pioneering sending missionaries to so many places where there was no gospel. And I think now, even the American church probably is going through a hard time, because it has grown into something that it was probably never meant to be. And sometimes, you meet pastors that say, I don't even know how I got here. Man, we built this thing and I don't even like it, but I'm here and I'm part of the system and I have to do it. So I think one of the ways how is beneficial now is a two-way thing. And I think how is beneficial to partner with like a third world country, let's say, is in the way of we have to understand, like for us in Costa Rica, we have to get out of the mentality that the U.S. is the one that has money and we don't. So they have something to offer and we don't have anything to offer to them. So I think in that is like, how do we make that switch? Is to start seeing the people in the U.S. like people, not like dollar signs. And I think for the longest time that was kind of the thing. Is like how they explain it, that it was the elephant dancing with the mouse. And like the elephant was so excited about dancing with the mouse, and they had a party, and then all of a sudden they find at the end of the night, the mouse was dead. And and it was because in the beginning the U.S. will have that approach, like we're here to save you, we're here to do great things with you, and then he killed it.
Yeah.
It was just, it's like when you give a toddler a puppy, they love him so much that they kill him. And I think that's kind of in a way happened in the beginning with short-term missions to other countries like that. But now it's kind of, there's a switch now. I think as the church now in especially Latin America and Costa Rica, let's speak in my district, we're looking at, man, we need to get out of that mentality. Now we cannot be just on the receiving end as well. We need to be like, how do we do this? We're sending, like, for example, right now we have somebody serving in Germany from our church in Costa Rica, a tiny little church. He's serving in Germany, in Berlin, serving with Syrian refugees.
Okay.
So, and then, it's like, as we are invested, I think that Latin America will be also, as the U.S. invests in Latin America, I feel like Latin America will be an amazing platform to send missionaries to a lot of those countries. And if you look at it, the U.S. has the resources that probably the Latin American church doesn't have in the sense of material resources. But then we have a lot of human resources.
Okay.
For example, let's be honest. If I was to go, Indonesia is one of the most Muslim countries in the world. Bro, I could go to Indonesia and I can fit in.
Yeah.
What about you?
Nope. Stand out like a sore thumb.
Exactly. So and when we look at that, how do we get beneficial? There's a partnership that we can be together and actually send to other parts of the world as well. And then the other part is like, for you guys, like let's see more of an immediate thing. How it works is like as you send teams down there, it gives them another perspective of what a global Christian is. Because let's be honest, right? There's some people that have never left their country. And they think, and oftentimes they think Christianity is this, is what I know all my life, is what it is. So when they see to another place and they see Christianity at another level, they either will like be shocked, or they will like, what? This is awesome. God is much bigger than what I thought it was. So we had seen also the way how we can do this. We've seen that people go down with missionaries, and obviously it has to be a good communication in the two sides, because if you say I'm bringing a bunch of people that have been a lot of Christians for a long time, we know how to deal with them. But if you say, hey, I'm bringing some people that perhaps this is their first time, they're not real Christians, we want to bring them as a mission trip, but the group itself is the mission. That makes sense. So we had people that had come down, somebody that was not a Christian, they became Christians on there. And they said, this is real. I never thought that, they thought it was just only my grandma or,
Yeah.
And so it becomes real to them because they experience Christ at a different level.
So missions trip being less about us finding a team of really solid Christians who go and save somebody, and more of the missions being, here's an opportunity for people who could use that expansion of their worldview and to see Christianity in a different light that makes it suddenly come to life in a way that it didn't by just seeing it in the normal way they've seen it their entire life.
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it just creates, you know, and it's like, it's almost a way to minister, it's almost a way to evangelize as well. Because, I mean, honestly, I'll be honest with you. I mean, we get hit maybe twice a month by random emails. People just say, man, hey, we looked that up and we saw what you guys are doing down there is amazing. God is doing amazing things. I feel like God is calling me there. You know, I'm like, hey, I just want to go down there. I just want to work on my Spanish. I want to work on my surfing and, you know, and all these things. And then, you know, we started to filter people out because all of a sudden people just want to go there because they want to be tourists down there. You know, there was a guy that actually asked us, he says, I want to come down and just take pictures for you guys. I just finished photography school. All I need, I would love to be there and help you for 3 months. All I need for you guys is just get me a place to sleep and feed me, and if you guys can find me a car, you know, maybe a little bit of spending money, that's all I need. I'm like, bro, are you for reals?
That's a lot.
I was like, no thanks.
It's a bold ask.
We don't need pictures, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, but it's almost like that kind of a thing. But then the other part has also been, and I was just saying because Costa Rica, when we say we're missionary in Costa Rica, people's like, oh, rough life, you
Yeah.
know. And I was wondering how many people want to go down there because feel like God is calling them down there. I wonder if we will be in Afghanistan, people will have that much urgency to go.
Yeah. Is God calling you or is Instagram calling you?
Exactly. So, you know, what we're trying to do is we had, you know, it's like, let's seize that. The fact that we're also in a beautiful place, it's a safe place for traveling. Why not be a really good platform for people to be trained on that kind of missions? At the same time, maybe you have somebody here in Warsaw that says, I feel like God will probably be calling me to foreign missions. You know, if you send them to Afghanistan first shot, he might change his mind in the first 2 weeks. But if he goes to Costa Rica and start experiencing it and what does it mean to be in a different culture, be like, you know what, I don't think this is for me. Or they could be like, I feel like God is really doing this.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a training ground. I feel like you could also see it that way, so both ways. And actually when we work both ways, when a group goes down there, and literally, I think it's beneficial when a group goes down there and says, we are here to do what you guys need help with. It's just beautiful. The problem is when people come down with an agenda and they say, we have this, where can we unpack it? It's like, we don't want to just keep it packed and take it home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it's that communication. It's like coming down in humility, we're here to serve you. And as we are there, we're just like, man, we are here to serve you. So it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, short-term missions can be devastating.
So I am inspired by that because I feel like there's two visions of short-term missions that exist in the U.S. that are starting to break down. I feel like they're starting to break down now, which is the one vision, which is the only point of short-term missions is to go and build something for somebody and just do a job, physical work. If we're not doing physical work or we're not providing medicine, it's not worth going. So there's one vision. And then there's another that says, I'm a tourist. I'm showing up and I'm calling it missions so I feel good about myself, but I'm just going on vacation. And I feel like they're both starting to break down, which I think is a good thing. And I love this vision that you're presenting of, it's in the middle of those, it brings the good parts of those together. Because tourism says, I want to know your culture. I want to know new people. I want new experiences. I want my worldview to grow. So that's the good part of the tourism part that's being drawn out. And then I want to serve you.
Yes.
I want to be with you and to help in any way that I can. That's the good part about that side. And you're coming together and saying, let's take those good parts and make them something sustainable that actually transforms both communities.
Exactly.
Cool. I love it. Well, Dennis, thank you so much for this interview. I'm sure the folks listening or watching will enjoy it too. And we'll be staying in touch. And I look forward to hearing more and more about how this goes. Hopefully we'll be visiting you soon.
I really hope to see you guys down there.
All right.
Costa Rica.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. We'll catch you next time. All right, that's it. Thank you.